Well, the Phoenix Suns seem to have hit a little bit of a snag. We'll talk about that. Plus, what is all the spacing and the Mavs rise and all this? What does this mean for Denver? All that and more on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us part of your day and your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where you can join the show. Just hit the subscribe, like, and notifications button on there, and you can get tuned in and join the show and chat along with us as we discuss all sorts of things, including, we'll get to the Suns. We're going to talk about the Suns and their amazing collapse versus the Dallas Mavericks, what the Mavericks' rise means for Denver, a question of spacing and shooting and 5 out and all that types of stuff, plus a look around the playoffs as well. We'll do all that and more on today's show. We'd like to thank today's sponsor of Locked On Nuggets, Sakara Nutrition. Sakara is a wellness company anchored in food as medicine on a mission to nourish. Go to sakara.com, sakara.com/LockedOn20 or enter code LockedOn20 for 20% off at checkout. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by my colleague, Adam Mares, at Adam_Mares on the old Twitters. Whoo boy, Adam's riding high this morning. He is on a buzz.
I'm hungover. I didn't even drink, but I'm hungover from being on too much of a high last night.
Would you say that you're drunk? You got a little drunk on Haterade? Is that an accurate way to say it?
I was so drunk on Haterade. I overdosed. I mean, that was an all-timer, Matt. That was. You sit there and think about worst-case scenarios in sports. The worst is just when you know it's over, like the Utah Jazz know it's over, right? They had all these hopes, and they're Donovan Mitchell-Gobert pairing because that's your era. And when you realize it's over, we might be there with Phoenix with the added bonus of getting absolutely humiliated in a Game 7. So that's about for Phoenix. It's about as hard as you can crash from the top.
Yeah, it was an absolutely. I'll say this: like it was like Game 7s, kind of anything goes, and Game 7s are often weird and wonky. And it was just even talk our mutual friend Kirk Henderson, like big Mavs fan, huge Mavs fan, runs Mavs Moneyball, huge podcast. Even he's like, I don't know what the fuck happened to the Suns. Like, I mean, honestly, even like Josh Bowe, his co-editor over there, he's like, they just threw the ball to the Mavericks constantly in Game 6 and 7.
You don't know what happened to him, but I think we can say what happened. Like, look, maybe there's these, other circumstances. Whatever, it doesn't matter. What happened was they got punched in the mouth and they wilted. That's what happened. Oh, I'm on the wrong mic. You're telling me. Can you hear me though?
I was trying to be, I could hear you. I'm just trying to be subtle about it. I was trying to slide in like, hey, when you get a second, you might want to adjust your mic.
You could break the fourth wall of that. No, that's that. They got, to me, it's just that we wondered if Phoenix was a front running team for the last 2 years. And this is the thing. It was a loss that was so bad that it makes us recontextualize the entire Chris Paul era in Phoenix, including last year, because they never got challenged last year until the finals. And you thought, well, yeah, but they've been a good team for so long and they've been focused on this or that. To me, this whole series was about when they were up, just like Luka said, when they were up, they were acting tough. They were talking tough. They were feeling good. But the moment that you punched them back, they wilted. And in Game 7, they wilted like unlike anything I had ever seen. And to me, it's like it puts the period on the end of the sentence of that team. They are, in fact, a front-running team. And I'm not saying this to be trollish or to joke. I genuinely believe that this was a team that when they got punched, Game 7 was the result of what happened. In my wildest takes, like my wildest perspective on them, I wouldn't have guessed they would have wilted this hard. I wondered, did they have what it takes? Lose by 2 or 3. They kind of choke at the end. I didn't think completely wilt under the pressure of the moment.
It's crazy because I was looking this up last night. So Chris Paul's like, Nuggets fans know how good he is in mid-range. Like they know, like you play that drop scheme and he just kills you over and over and over again. Adam, in the final 4 games, Chris Paul shot 38%. off of the pick and roll versus drop coverage. Like 38%. Devin Booker shot like 40%. It was absolutely horrible. Like they built their entire team on we make tough shots, and then they didn't. And that's a lot. Like you got to credit Reggie Bullock, you got to credit Dorian Finney-Smith, you got to credit the Mavs for hanging with them. But like I was watching these possessions this morning of like Davis Bertans was plus 7.1 in that series. How do you let Davis Bertans stay on the floor? How do you not?
Of course,
like they're for a team that was so disciplined all year. They were so good, and they just got so rattled and far away from what they wanted to do. Like CP, like I'll honestly say, like, look, we had questions about him wearing down, whatever. And like, there's been reports that he denied about an injury. That's always kind of what happens. I think it's pretty like everyone's banged up, so I get that. Nobody wants to make excuses for the team that front runs and loses. I do think, like, as a reminder for Nuggets fans, if they're the number 1 seed next year, like the mantra needs to be constantly like, we'll see what they do in the playoffs. We'll see what they do in the playoffs.
Are you kidding me? This is such a perspective on that for Denver. Like it's such a perspective that the regular season is just going to be so different. But
so I actually looked this up last night. 2021 Utah Jazz, number 1 overall seed, lost in the semifinals. 2020, you had who was the number 1 seed that year? I'm trying to think. It wasn't the Lakers that won. The Bucks. The Bucks lost in the semifinals. 2019, the Bucks lost in the conference finals. 2018, the Rockets lost in the conference finals. Like whoever's we've had 1 seeds in one of the conferences win the title in the last 10 years. There's like I think 4 instances out of 10 of the number 1 seed in one of the conferences winning the title, but the number 1 overall seed actually is significantly lower. It's especially in the last 5 years. It's been crazy. Like it's another reason why the regular season has never been further removed from the playoffs. But it is kind of interesting just to keep that in mind is like, do you want regular season success? You do. Do you want enough that you wind up focusing on that and not the playoffs? No. Like you should always have your mind on focus on the playoffs no matter what. As soon as you can guarantee yourself a top 4 seed, you should honestly be like, we need to experiment. We need to manage minutes. We need to do like whatever it is that you're focused on, I think, because we've seen these teams. I'll say this. Phoenix really got into that. Like they bought too much into it this season. I really do think this. There were a lot of games where they had starters in blowouts and they were like making a point of it. And the Warriors did this in 2016 too. And I was like, I don't know if you want to do this. Like, I just don't know if you want to be constantly trying to show up your opponent in the regular season.
That show up part is the part.
Yeah. And like, it comes back to you because like today, I didn't really realize it. Like, I did not realize how many people hated this team. We got Patrick Beverly on Get Up, just torching him, which I will say, like, I love Pat Bev again. Woo Pig Silly.
Oh, are you kidding me? Pat Bev saw a moment. Like he called up ESPN. It's like, hey, I'm available. I'll drive in the studio tomorrow if you guys want.
You know, and now it like you were mentioning this before we came on the air, just like how it changes the entire kind of concept of this landscape of the West, because before it was like, man, we're gonna deal with Phoenix next year, and now it's like somebody mentioned this earlier in the chat, asking me like, do I still think that MPJ would need to be benched versus Phoenix because they've lost they're 0-2 against fully healthy teams in the past 2 playoffs? Okay, fair. That's fair. I think Jamal probably would have helped, and we can talk about that. But I do think also that, like, look, the Mavs, one of the good things about them is they managed to cover for their defensive liabilities. Like, they managed to cover for Davis Bertans. They managed to cover for Luka Doncic after targeting the hell out of him in the first 2 games. So, like, that's going to be a lot of it. It's like, okay, you can play MPJ, but you're going to have to be really great defensively everywhere else. You had some thoughts on Jamal versus the Suns matchup.
Well, hold on. First thing I want to say, though, that I think is as important. I know this is a silly thing. They did not get tested last year. They got plenty of rest. Chris Paul, who was 36 last year, 37 this year, got to skate through the playoffs without ever getting tired. You talked about those mid-range shots. This is why I don't separate defense and offense, even though everybody says, well, they always want to say, well, you got one side of the court figured out of the set. Chris Paul didn't have to work against the Nuggets last year. What did he shoot in the mid-range? 80% from the mid-range? Well, yeah, because he got to take 20 seconds off it, then walk up the court and get right to his spot and comfortably shoot it with no pressure. The difference was in the first round, he had Jose Alvarado pressure him from 90 feet from the basket. They took him to 6 games. He was tired by the end of that series. You get into this one, you have another exhausting one where they're going at you in pick and rolls. Now you got to guard Luka, who's got 70 pounds on you, and it's physical and all this. And to me, it's not disconnected from the fact that those two guys, Booker and Chris Paul, turned into pumpkins in Game 7 and couldn't make anything. This is part. And as you were mentioning, it wasn't just Game 7. It was all of the games they lost down the stretch. Those guys ran into a wall. To me, those things are connected. Denver just couldn't punish him last year. And yes, Jamal Murray, you look at this series, Spencer Dinwiddie went off on him. Jalen Brunson went off him. Those guys are good players. I'm not saying that as to be dismissive. Jamal Murray's better. He's better than both of them at the things that they are good at, namely playing pick and roll, playing isolation, one-on-one, getting to the rim, making shots, just making guys work. And by the way, I think Jamal Murray more physical too. When you talk about both of those guys having to guard, Jamal Murray is a strong physical player. He can post you up. He's got shake to his game. So to me, I just look at those things and you think like, how does that translate? How does that, when you look at a series, sometimes you can look like they weren't even in the class. The Warriors beat them in 5 games. They weren't even in their class. Everything changes when you make everybody have to work, when you keep everybody honest.
Before we get to break, I want to hit on this point because this is a really good one, actually, especially with regard to the Nuggets. Jonathan says Ayton's gone. So
17 minutes last night.
Yeah, he gets benched, and then somebody asked Monty about it post-game, and he said it's internal. And like in the most like stern way that somebody said that was the most stern they've heard Monty respond to an answer.
I saw another report that said they saw Ayton saying he would not go in. Like they tried to put him back in and he would like refuse to go in. So I don't know if that's true, but I mean, that could be part of.
But I'll say this, like if he doesn't return, right. And there's a lot of teams I think that want him, including the Blazers, which would make, I think, them a much tougher matchup. But if you take Ayton off that team, even as well as Jokic like destroyed him in various points in the matchups this season, like he did his thing, that I think helped Denver, right? Like the Suns losing Ayton would be great for Denver.
Oh, there's no question. Ayton, as much as I think that Jokic can handle anyone, there are still guys that make him less than 100%, and Ayton is on the very short list of that. So yeah, you replace him with literally anybody else. I mean, what are you going to replace him with, Nurkic? Is it a trade or something like that? There's no question to me. I mean, you look at, this is what's so hard about the NBA, and it kind of sucks, but it also keeps it interesting. Your windows can be so short because it becomes harder just from a financial standpoint as things go on. I mean, Mikal Bridges' contract goes up. Ayton might be gone just for financial reasons. All of a sudden, you just have less and less cap space. You have to make more and more compromises. But yes, I mean, I think I look at that. I know it sounds like a hot take. I know it sounds incendiary. I kind of feel like the Phoenix Suns' window closed. And part of this is, man, well, I know, but here's the thing. There's losing, and then there's what happened in that game. And I just have I saw ESPN tweeted out a quote from Chris Paul that said something like, it was like, Chris Paul's no days off. And then it's a quote that says, yeah, my son was texting me and said, when are we getting in the gym? I told him tomorrow. And it's one of those quotes where you're like, sometimes you read that and a young, like if Brandon Ingram had that one, you'd be like, okay, guy, he's ready. He's climbing. Chris Paul has one after a 35-point loss meltdown like that. And you just roll your eyes. You're like, dude, you can get in the gym if you want tomorrow, man. Like this train has sailed.
Oh,
not for Chris Paul. I'm saying for this team. Like, I just don't think that team is hey, that was tough, but we bounced back from that. That's okay, we are not that.
Yeah. They're going to have to rethink some things going into next season. Let's take a break. We'll come back and I want to talk about the Mavericks and the 5-out stuff and the spacing that we've seen in the playoffs and how it relates to Denver. We'll do that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I want to talk about Sakara. Feeling your best starts with what you eat. Sakara helps you live a healthy, balanced lifestyle and truly enjoy it with delicious, plant-rich, transformational nutrition that builds a foundation for living in your best body. Now is the time to seek wellness, joy, and abundance in all areas of your life, starting with what you eat. And with Sakara, you get nutrient-dense meals, snacks, and supplements that nourish your body without ever sacrificing taste or quality. True radiance starts on your plate. Made with high-quality organic ingredients, Sakara's plant-rich transformational nutrition programs are expertly designed to deliver real results, from reduced bloat and ease digestion to clear skin and boosted energy and moods. Looking and feeling your best shouldn't mean deprivation. Instead, choose joy and abundance. So, Sakara is a wellness company anchored in food as medicine on a mission to nourish your body through the power of plants. They've got functional plant-rich wellness essentials to help you create a body you love living in. From their best-selling Metabolism Super Powder to the Foundation, their daily supplement packs, Sakara's products are designed to support your wellness goals anytime, anywhere. And right now, Sakara is offering our listeners 20% off your first order when they go to Sakara, SAKARA.com/LockedOn20 or enter code LockedOn20 at checkout. That's Sakara.com/LockedOn20 to get 20% off your first order. Sakara.com/LockedOn20. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for joining us and making this part of your day. Make sure that your second listen is the Locked On NBA Big Board. You got the NBA Lottery tomorrow night. Check out the Locked On NBA Big Board, hosted by Rafael Barlow from NBA Draft Junkies and author of the NBA Big Board newsletter, joined by Richard Stamen, Sam Ferris, and Leif Thilling, giving fans an in-depth look into the NBA draft with mock drafts, player rankings, and, of course, the big boards. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. Back here on Locked On Nuggets with Adam. So, Adam, I think that this series is really interesting from a number of perspectives. We saw kind of the same thing happen in the Eastern Conference to a certain degree. The Mavs wound up doing to the Suns what I didn't know that they would be able to. So all season long, the Suns had kind of resisted switching. They didn't add a small ball five. They lost Dario Saric for the season, and they never replaced him with a small ball option. They went with Bismack Biyombo and JaVale McGee. So they were playing a traditional five a whole way. Ayton's switch numbers were pretty good. But what was kind of interesting is the Mavs just did to the Suns what they did to the Jazz.
Yeah.
They spaced Ayton to the corner with Maxi Kleba and then attacked inside. You watch all these possessions for both Boston versus Milwaukee, the Suns versus the Mavs, all these types of series, and you look at the space underneath when these teams are switching, and there's no rim protection. There's no rim protection. So if you beat that initial switch, if you could beat your guy one-on-one, there's no coverage because your rim protector, the guy that you have to do that, is spaced too far out to be able to make that decision, which to me just means the imperative for the Denver Nuggets has got containment. It's going to have to be they have the perimeter, and they have to be able to trust these guys and say, like, honestly, I think what a lot of this gets to, Adam, is you just got to be able to be like, look, help may not be possible anymore in terms of like the rim protector coming over to block the shot. Yeah. You can bring help from different angles. You can bring help with doubles from different situations. You can layer your defense from certain perspectives. But overall, I just don't know that you can really have like rim protection anymore in the NBA playoffs. You're going to have to be able to either switch or blitz, which I think the Nuggets can do. The drop question, I think, is still a really interesting one because Milwaukee had a lot of success with it. They won the title last year with it, and they still had a lot of success in this series with it, but they needed to be able to switch, and they didn't. And I'm really curious as to your thoughts about 5-out spacing, shooting, and perimeter containment and how it relates to Denver with what we learned from these series.
I think your point is the right one in that I don't think anybody can do it. This is why it's so annoying when people talk about like, oh, Jokic, you get him out in space, and what is this? Who can do it? Who can do it? Ayton's one of the better defensive centers in the NBA. Cooked. Absolutely cooked. Useless in this way. We've seen every player, Rudy Gobert, doesn't matter how good of a rim protector you are, you get out into if you get against the good players. I mean, some teams try to do this and they don't have the personnel. Like a Toronto, for example, will play 5-out, and they're pretty good at it, but they're not going to they're going to run into a level where it's like, okay, you can't do this. Luka Doncic isn't that level. Luka Doncic is that there is no big in the league that can get switched out onto him and handle him correctly. And so when you get to that level of player, to me, this is where I say offense and defense are connected. I just don't think that you can stop them there. Denver, by the way, is not going to switch. They're going to still try to play the pick and roll perimeter containment and probably going to get cooked in it. The difference is you just have to go to the other end and you have to make them pay just as much. You have to draw fouls. You have to slow the game down and get into that.
So from that perspective, this brings back a point that was kind of central to us from the beginning of training camp through the end of the season. One thing that we kind of talked about that was frustrating for I think fans and us as well. So there's the whole question of when Malone came in, it was basically like, we want to shoot 43s a night. Everybody's like, really? And then there was all these kind of questions of like, well, look, if you're missing threes, try and get to the rim, which I always kind of hate, where it's like, look, if you have open threes from good shooters, you should just continue to shoot them. Unless you're Milwaukee, apparently, who just in the playoffs can never hit them. It's so painful. My question here, though, is this is why I think, look, I think they need improvement on the perimeter. We talked about this in terms of the defense. Like, I'm sold on they need a 2-guard that can defend at an elite level. You have to be able to shoot threes because the Suns had pretty good perimeter. Like, they've got Mikal Bridges. They did not. They had a math problem in the series badly.
Yeah.
Like, they got outshot so much. You have to have volume threes. You don't need one thing because there's other teams that will challenge you on the inside. Like, you need a lot of different things.
Yeah.
But you can't be in a situation where you're like, we just can't win the math game. You have to at least be able to win the math game.
Yeah, and I think like Phoenix, Denver has some guys that are very good at breaking the math. I mean, namely Jokic. Like Jokic from 6 feet, that's not a good shot for most people. For him, it is a good one. But at the end of the day, you're right. You still have to be able to compete with him. And by the way, the NBA, I've never been one of these guys, but the NBA, I do feel like what we're talking about here kind of sucks. Like, I kind of hate that this is
I know you hate that it's like you got to shoot a lot of threes.
Well, no. I just hate that the game can be solved in a way that is like, well, that limits the it limits what basketball can be to some capacity. That's why I want somebody to break it. But Luka's a really good player. He's sort of perfecting what the NBA sort of allows.
And part of this too is, I'll say this because this to me is the story of the series. I think Luka is a very attractive narrative to drift towards, and he's awesome. Like, there's no doubt about it. And Brunson played great, and Dinwiddie. The Suns had a 127 offensive rating in their wins. They had a 100 offensive rating in their losses.
Now, but the question becomes: how often can you expect a 120? What do you think the cutoff period is? 120.
Yeah, but you don't need it. You need, like, I think that in wins they held the Mavs at like a 114. So it's like, you only need like a 118, which is a lot more doable, right? So like the question here is mostly just, for me, it's, you mentioned, can you break it? This gets back to the Ayton thing. The Suns never trusted DeAndre Ayton. They never trusted him.
Right.
Like, and part of this, I will say, to the Mavs' credit, the Mavs, by trading Porzingis and not playing Boban, literally have just said, like, you can't play our small ball lineup off the floor because we don't have another one. Like, there's no other option. Dwight Powell played like 10 minutes in games 6 and games 5 and 6. Like, that's it. He played less than 15 in most of the games in this series because they were just like, nope. Like, no matter what, like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to play 5 out consistently. And if they're going to do that, I do think that Jokic is the player that can punish them enough. Like, if you do not have a center that can do anything to Jokic, that even slow him down, if you don't have Draymond Green, essentially, if you don't have that level of defender, and even then, like, you look at Jokic's numbers by the end of that series, right? Like, Denver's problem against the Warriors was perimeter containment and having nobody else. So if you have those two things, then you're in a much better position for Jokic to be able to punish it over and over again. And then maybe you can change the context of the series. You can make the Mavericks desperate and just be like, man. But to do that, you also have to be able to get stops with that big unit, which is going to mean that, like, I'll just stress this. I'd love to get your thoughts on this, honestly. Okay. Against the Mavs, because they run tons of pick and roll. The Warriors honestly don't. The Mavericks do. They run a ton of pick and roll, right? The Warriors got Jokic like on switches, out of position, various things, and broken coverage a lot of time where they weren't supposed to switch things and they did. But versus the Mavericks, like, how would you play that with Jokic on the floor?
I mean, I think the only way Denver can play it, which is you're just going to have to show hard on the screen. You're going to have to fight over, and you're going to be in rotation the whole time, and you're going to get scored on a lot. I mean, I just think that's the way you're going to have to do it. But again, this is the thing: is you always think about what are other teams going to do to you, and you just have to think about what can you do to other teams. And it's going to be one of those, let's see which team is the most compromised. I mean, here's the thing: if you told me a lineup that has Michael Porter, Murray, Jokic, and Gordon on the court. So let's say you add a Josh Hart player, who Josh Hart's a good but not great player. He's going to knock down most of his spot up threes. He's going to know where to be offensively, and then defensively he's going to guard at a pretty high level. To me, I just look at that and go, can that be solved? I don't know that it can. So now you get into a track meet with those teams and say, hey, can Jokic out-dominate Luka in these? Can Murray out-dominate Brunson? Can Michael Porter make more shots than Spencer Dinwiddie?
Yeah.
To me, that's really the answer to it. And by the way, everybody acts like this is And this is like, it's funny how we've gone back and forth talking about the defense. My thing has never been that defense isn't important. It's that you can't just expect to shut the best teams down. You just can't do it. It won't happen.
I mean, I think for me, it's like it's all about ranges, right? It's like if you give up a 114 to the Mavs, you're doing pretty well because of how many threes that they shoot. If you give up a 130, well, you probably need to do a little bit better, you know. And I think that's like a lot of it. But I will say this: the series kind of, I'm oddly more encouraged for the Nuggets based off of the fact that the Warriors definitely seem like there's a little bit of a, hey, this may be their last like real, like there is a real sense of, man, this is harder for them, right? Like they're not in their prime anymore. And there's definitely like a, man, we don't know how many more years, like great years we're going to have with this core.
They're also another team. I'm not trying to take away from the Warriors by any means. I have so much respect for them, but they're also a team that got the easy path this year. Like they just happened to get Denver that was so shorthanded, and they got a Memphis team that lost Ja. I know they play well without him, but I'm just saying they got the easier path.
Right.
Next year they might have a 7. By the way, I think about this all the time, Matt, because LeBron went to the finals, 10 years in a row? And I'm not trying to take away from his runs, but he always had at least one sweep in there. And I'm just saying, like, if you don't get that, what happens? Like, if you have to play a 6-game series 4 times, it just makes it that much harder. And it's a lesson for Denver. I mean, Denver has had a lot of long series in the first round. They have not shown the ability to sweep a team. Like, I honestly wonder this. Can Denver sweep anyone? They play with their food a little too often. And I think going forward, you learn, as good as Jokic and Murray and these guys are, we've never seen Jokic play 4 rounds of playoff basketball. It'd be great for you to get a 4 or 5 game series once or twice en route to a title.
And that's where the seeding matters, right? Like, you know, I talked about how the number 1 seeds of like Miami got an easy run versus the Hawks, and then
no question.
And people are going to talk a lot about Embiid wasn't healthy and this, that, and the other. I'll just tell you, like, I like the Sixers or the Heat in that series. Embiid fully healthy. I like them to win that. Like, I had them in 6 anyway. And I still think it winds up being the case. A testament, right, is the Heat worked in the regular season and got that 1 seed. So they got an easy opponent in the Hawks, and they got a preferable matchup. Like Heat versus Celtics or Bucks goes 7. It just does, you know, at least if they win it. So there is value to the regular season. You just got to make sure that you're not like putting too much of an emphasis on it.
But
you want to win
But hold up. But here's the thing about the West. Are we sure the 1 seed's going to have an easier matchup next year? The West just has so many good teams. Like if you look at it this year, is there a chance that the Lakers are the 7 or 8 seed next year? Or maybe it's, you know, there's so many good teams, some good, and then you go to the play-in. So then you almost get the best of the final 4 seeds. I just think that there's a chance that it's unfortunate. I agree with you that you still want to have a good regular season. You want to get home court, but you might just end up with the toughest draw in the 1-8 because of how it works now.
Let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about what we've learned from these playoff series, and we'll touch on some other stuff going around the league. We'll do that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, it's time. Oh, yes, it's time for Built Bar. I got a new box on Saturday, the birthday cake puffs. Protein infused, covered in 100% chocolate, tastes like birthday cake, absolutely increasing. It just incredible. Imagine dipping your finger into that plastic tub of birthday cake frosting and then opening your eyes and realizing that was only 150 calories with 16 grams of protein. That's what it's like to eat a birthday cake puff from Built. And if you haven't tried the puffs, I'll let you know a little secret because that's what friends do. A chocolate-covered marshmallow protein. Yeah, you heard me. Delicious marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. Make every day your birthday with Built's birthday cake puffs. Built has taken the delicious experience of biting into a fresh slice of birthday cake and robed it in 100% white chocolate and added sprinkles. And with 150 calories, 16 grams of protein, and only 9 grams of sugar, this limited time flavor is an amazing option if you're looking for a healthy way to get flavor and variety. All Built Puffs are covered in 100% chocolate along with all of the bars, and they're made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Go to Built.com to get the birthday cake puffs now. If you go and use promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15, you'll get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. We're also brought to you today by Effortless Rehab. I want to tell you about Effortless Rehab. So if you look at this, it's absolutely phenomenal. It's been used by NBA teams, including the Jazz, for years. accident that for 23 years, Utah had half the number of injuries as other teams' players. Hall of Famers John Stockton and Karl Malone remain the two least injured players over the last 40 years. And at age 39, Malone was still averaging 20 points in 36 minutes a game, playing in 81 games. What did the Jazz do that no other NBA team has done? They employed a doctor who uses a method MIT. You can join Broncos linebacker Bill Romanowski, Olympians like Peekaboo Street, and other top athletes because IT Effortless Rehab is available in Denver, and you can try it out for an incredibly low intro price. There are about 20 muscles that support each joint. If you got current pain or have ever 30% or more of the muscles in that area are likely to be shut off or inhibited is the technical term. AMIT Effortless Rehab reboots those muscles, turns them back on again immediately and without difficult workouts. Rebooting those muscles can instantly relieve pain, restore range of motion, prevent future injuries, and help you regain performance you may have thought was gone for good. What's your worst joint? Dr. Robert Weiss will reboot the muscles in that joint for a price of just $35. You'll be amazed at how fast your body can change. Go to effortlessrehab.com/appointments to make an appointment online. AMIT Effortless Rehab, your fastest recovery ever. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for making this part of your day and your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on platforms. Also, make sure to check out Locked On NBA. I'll be on tomorrow previewing the Eastern and Western Conference Finals with David Ramil. Adam's on Fridays with Wes Goldberg, talking about all sorts of things across the NBA. Check it out, Locked On NBA, wherever you get podcasts. All right, Adam, final segment here. So continuing kind of our discussion here, I like the answer that we're kind of getting to here, which is I think it's that more now than ever. And I do think coaches have got to shift this. I think the smartest coaches have. There has long been the idea of we're going to do what we do well. Like, this is who we are. This is our identity. I don't know how far having a strong identity goes for you in the NBA playoffs now.
Really?
I think that you have to have, because so often if your identity is directly countered, if you're like, we are a beasting inside physical team that hacks the rim.
Okay. You're talking identity from like how you want to attack. I think one, you can't be solved, and two, you probably have to have counter punches, right? Like you can't just be a one. Although the one thing I'll say is, what's Dallas's counter?
That's the question. Nobody's hit him with it yet. Nobody's made them. That's where it gets back to Ayton, right? If they were just like, look, we're going to give the ball to Ayton and he's going to hit you with 8, like we're letting Ayton score 40 on you and we're going to pressure you into being like, God, we cannot let this guy keep going. Let's double him. And once you double, then he opens up everything on the perimeter so that the Mavs aren't just keeping everything in front. If you've got really great perimeter defenses, you want them to double so you can shake him a little bit, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's no question. That's why I think when you talk about identity, though, because yes, I think you have to have counters. You can't be solvable. You have to have a knockout punch that is so good that very few, if any, teams can stop it. And then you have to have a counter punch that if teams put all of their eggs in stopping that punch, you have the counter punch that gets them. So you have to have multiple ways to be able to beat them, especially if those multiple ways play off of each other. And by the way, I think that's part of what makes Jamal and Jokic so great. We even saw I was going to say, we've even seen in their great playoff wins, we've seen them go back and forth between who's the guy. And a lot of that has to do with, okay, defense says we have to overload on this. Denver has the counter punch. You overload on that. Denver has the counter punch. But identity to me means more almost personality and those types of things than it does like play style.
Yeah, that's I guess if you define identity as like how you play, like you can have an identity as like we're mentally tough or we're professional. Like there's always different, like I'm trying to think of the word.
But here's a part of the identity, Matt. Has Denver played their best games up in a series or down in a series throughout their history?
Yeah, down in a series for sure.
I'm being dead serious about this. It's funny because when you go back and look at like, people have been doing the Chris Paul in elimination games or like 0-7 or this or that. Like Jokic elimination games is like 9-4. It's crazy to think, that he's played that many of them, but he has, and they've won an overwhelming amount of them.
I mean, look, a lot of this too, I will say because the Suns lost, we're shifting a lot of this to like the Suns are frauds and the Suns are this and they're broken and they're
they lost the way they did.
I totally agree, because that says more about the side of it. Like, that's kind of my point, is like, I don't think that the formula of the Suns is broken. I think they're a team identity and like mental composure.
I like that.
Right? Because here's my thing. Put the games 3 and 4. I'll tell you this. I still am not able to, like, again, I do this a lot and I'm willing to be just dumb. Sometimes I'm just dumb. I watched 3, 4, 6, and 7. Like 6, I'm willing to just pass off. Like, a lot of that was just like the Mavs shot insane. But 3, 4, and 6, I do not have an answer for you on what the Mavs did. Like, I can pinpoint little things, but like so much of it was like the Suns just played drunk. Like, they just play. And if they play to their capacity in 3, 4, 7 is a different deal. But in 3 or 4, they end this thing in 5. But they didn't. They screwed around and they completely lost their way. It's also a good reminder of like how close Denver was to not making the conference finals in 2020, given that they built that 3-1 hole. And a lot of it was, we were just like, what are you doing? You know, we freaked out on him, and at least in that first round series. So if you're talking, I do think that your point's really salient here about, look, make things easier on yourself. Keep the hammer down. Like, maintain your composure. Win when you're up, when you have the advantage. Don't go into like the games 3 and 4 on the road and be like, you know, well, we got 1 and 2, so we're okay. Like, you need to get 1, 3, and 4. You need one, like, that needs to be always the formula. Win your first 2 home games with a top 4 seed, and then go in and take 3 or 4. You know,
you just got to. Yeah, you just got to. The Suns also, I will say, it's funny. You're going to hate this one. Ooh. I do contrast a little bit. Devin Booker's trash talking Luka and laying on the ground. Oh, that was the Luka special, as he smirks into the camera when you're up 30 points in game 5, versus the Warriors is dancing to whoop that trick when they're down 50 on the road. Like, there's just a little bit of a difference to me, to a team. Like, to me, Draymond has the real confidence in that, like, I'm losing by this much. I'm willing to put myself out there because I have this much confidence. Same with Luka. We just lost by 30 and I'm going to walk down the hallway talking trash, versus the like, oh, we're up 30, I'm going to do this. And to me, that's part of what this Phoenix Suns identity is. This is just how I'm going to have to go. And I know some people have said, like, in the chat, like, oh, this is an overreaction, guys. It was game 7. If they would have lost by 3 or 4, or if they would have lost last year, like,
tough series didn't go your way.
Tough series, like, oh, this is going to fuel them for next year. They were so close. And this, it's just like last year. I didn't say these hot takes last year after game 6 of the finals, like, oh, their title window's closed. It's like, hey, they get a lesson here. This is one of those ones where you look at it and you go, nope, something's wrong. Something's wrong in there. And it's not a, hey, use this fuel for, for fire.
Yeah. I think it's tough. I will say, like, there's going to be a lot of, I'll just say this. I think there's going to be a lot of overreaction on the Dallas side. I think, like, oh man, Luka's so good, and look at this Mavs team and like all this. And you remember the Blazers made the conference finals? You remember that?
Yeah, they beat
them. Well, I'm a little worried about. I don't know. There's 2 ways this is going to go. The start of the Luka era,
right,
and a dynasty with Dorian Finney-Smith and Jalen Brunson and Spencer Dinwiddie.
Yeah, right.
Or this is a little bit of a circumstances
guiding
the thing.
It reminds me less of that, of Dame's Portland team. It reminds me a lot more of LeBron's Cavs teams, which, I mean, it's the same time, the same like heliocentric star, supporting cast. His names don't necessarily ring out, but they fit the system really well. And I mean, back in 2007, you're like, yes, LeBron overachieved, got to the finals, but this is the beginning of the LeBron era. Never made it back until he came back till he went to Miami. It could be one of those. I don't know. Actually, here's a more important takeaway though for me, Matt. This is what Jokic was saying when in his exit interview, when he was like, do we have enough talent? Yes, it's just about if we play together. I don't know that the Mavericks have enough talent, because I do question some of those guys, but those guys fit the system, man. They all play in, they all buy in, they all do exactly what they're supposed to do. And maybe there's a limit, because if you replace Jalen Brunson with Damian Lillard, that's a better release valve for Luka than Jalen Brunson is. Like, there's levels to the Jalen Brunson type player. But there is something too. We always just think talent. And often it's talent plus fit, plus buy-in, plus all of these things. I think Denver has the talent, whether it's the right one or not. They still have a lot of talent. We'll see if they have the right fit. We'll see if they can put it all together in the right buy-in.
You're going to get in a lot of trouble with the comments for saying the Denver Nuggets have enough talent. You're going to get in a lot of trouble for that.
Well. To be clear, I should say this: they have the ability to have the right talent. They need to add a shooting guard. Like they're pieces they have to add. What I mean is the big pieces, like Jokic, Murray, Michael Porter, Aaron Gordon. We're off to the great start. Find the right two, and then figure out if they can all come together the way it needs to.
I don't know. I'll just say this. It's funny that you're like mentioning all this about the Mavs and the way they fit. Because, like, again, Kirk does not think they have a good roster. Like, their own fans do not think they have a good roster. Like, they literally are like, you need better players around Luka, which is why this run is very confusing for them. They're excited for it. But this is how it goes. Like, because the Suns have this incredible meltdown, and it's like, oh, the pieces all fit, and like everybody knows their role.
Oh, it's true.
And then if Golden State is like, but we have better players than you, like, and that's gonna be an interesting one. Like, I think the series is gonna be fascinating. I'm really interested because there's a lot of things about this that I think are, look, the Mavs want to run like they ran drop against the Suns and made it work, which is insane. Again, I need to stress how crazy that work versus the team that you should never be able to do that against.
Right.
With the Warriors, it's like, oh, do you want to drop versus Steph Curry? But it's also like the Warriors don't run a lot of pick and roll. Maybe it's not going to hurt them. Like the Warriors, Davis Bertans was a plus 7.1 in the series. You should be able to play him off. But guess what? The Warriors don't target guys. Kerr always says this. We're just going to play our game. He never targets dudes. They don't run switches at particular players. That's not what they do. So it's like, if you don't punish Dallas for the way that they play, they can beat you because Luka is that dude.
Yeah. I look at it because the talent thing is so funny to me because I do think, like, I would be shocked if Dallas won it. The thing is, Kyrie in many ways was the perfect running mate for LeBron, not because he filled all the gaps. He just filled one really well, and LeBron was good enough to fill every other gap. Like, there was one gap for LeBron. That was, can you give the ball to somebody that can ISO and take some of this off your plate and score? That, like, can LeBron play the smart basketball and Kyrie play the dumb basketball, and you bring that together and it covers all bases. I think you could say similar things for like LeBron and Dwayne Wade. Not the best, not like the ideal two guys you would put together, but it just gave you another guy that can attack. Jalen Brunson and Spencer Dinwiddie are both those guys. They're not the A version of that guy. And so when you talk about more talent, that's the thing that's weird about it is I almost do feel like this is the right formula for Dallas. They could just find an upgrade at those guys, but everybody else, you just need some Dorian Finney-Smiths around. Like, that's all you need. And for Denver, it might be the same thing, that Jamal Murray and Jokic, that's enough. Have just enough spacing and shooting, and hopefully you get something special out of Michael Porter that, surprises us all. And obviously some defense, and that might be the formula.
Can I get a prediction from you by Wednesday? By Wednesday's show, we'll record on Wednesday morning. Can I get a prediction from you on that series? Is that fair to ask from you?
Of course.
I'll give you time to think about it. I'll give you time. I'll give you 2 days to ruminate.
I probably won't spend that much time thinking about it, but it'll be. I mean, I'm excited for both of the series. I think Boston is the one I feel more confident than Miami. That's the one.
Nobody likes Miami but me, outside of the Heat, outside of like Heat fans. I'm like the only. I don't like them to win the series, but like I'm the only person that's been consistently like that team's really good. Like the Heat.
I just thought about it. Heat Mavs is kind of a good story. I mean, they've met each other 3 times. That would be
like a lot of history there. Those two fan bases hate each other.
It'd be the most random. It'd be the most random history. Aren't they both American Airlines too? It'd just be the most random like rivalry that you could possibly imagine. Nobody would have seen it coming, and then
also I would try and go cover that because the flights are easy to get back and forth from, and I love being in both cities. Ceviche in Miami and barbecue in Texas. Let's go. Let's go. All right, we're running long here. Thanks for joining us, everybody, on Locked On Nuggets. Really appreciate you guys joining us and supporting us throughout the off season. Another episode. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.